I am greatly honored to give this presentation at the TSA conference, and I'm deeply grateful to the members of the TSA who made this conference possible. This presentation centers on Japanese tapestries, mainly from the 19th century through the first half of the 20th century, and comparative Chinese and European tapestries, which serve as models for Japanese weavers to imitate. In this presentation, the term tapestry represents the weaving technique in tapestry west turn along the edge of the color fields. From the end of the 18th century through the first half of the 20th century, the foundation of the Japanese tapestries was based on foreign influences. And then Japanese expressions developed gradually. This development is divided into three stages: the end of the 18th century through the first half of the 19th century, the second half of the 19th century through the beginning of the 20th century, and the first half of the 20th century. In this presentation, the Japanese copies and the foreign originals for the first stage will be shown. Then, the creation of the Japanese tapestries in the first, the second, and the third stages will be discussed. We shall see how Chinese and the European tapestries influenced the formation of the Japanese tapestries, and how Japan tried to attain their own expressions through tapestries. The end of the 18th century through the first half of the 19th century falls under the end of the Edo period. Then, the Tokugawa shogunate imposed a closed-door policy, and limited numbers of foreign textiles were imported to Japan, mainly through private Chinese and the Dutch East India Company ships. Several Japanese and the Chinese tapestries preserved in the Gion Festival in Kyoto indicate that the Japanese copies of the Chinese tapestries were produced around the end of the 18th century and the first half of the 19th century. Tapestries were probably not produced in Japan before the 18th century. The earliest datable Japanese copy of the Chinese tapestry was produced in 1798 for the Kosho-yama flute. This large piece, 203 by 159 centimeters, indicates that the Japanese tapestry was fully developed. Therefore, it can be inferred that Japan began to produce tapestries copying the Chinese earlier than 1798, probably in the last half of the 18th century. The comparison of the Japanese copies and the Chinese originals in the Gion Festival is important, as it will clarify the earliest stage of the Japanese tapestries. Although some discussions are available, little research has been done, as it is difficult to distinguish the Japanese copies from the Chinese originals. The presenter uses one primary source as a guideline to distinguish the Japanese copies from the Chinese originals in the Gion Festival. That is, Zoho Gion-e Saiki, the detailed record of Gion Festival with additional information, hereafter Zoho. Zoho shows that one of the outer back hangings in the Kuronushiyama flute is the Chinese tapestry of 100 children on a red background. In Kuronushiyama district, a tapestry with the same features remains, showing that it is Chinese. Zoko shows that the outer back hanging of the Kannonyama flute is a Japanese tapestry illustrating playing Chinese children. And in Kannonyama district, the tapestry with the same features remains, indicating it is the Japanese. It was produced in or before 1818, according to Kannonyama Kishincho, the Kannonyama donation report. Kannonyama district owns one more tapestry depicting 100 children, which was produced in China, presumably in the 17th century, purchased by the district in the 20th century. Although the Chinese pieces in Kuronushiyama and Kannonyama depict the same pictorial theme around the same time, the piece in Kannonyama is more suitable for comparison because it is in much better condition and clearer. So, the Chinese original and the Japanese copy in Kannonyama district will be compared. In the Chinese and the Japanese tapestries of the Kannonyama float, the boys are similarly depicted. However, in the Chinese piece, outlines are much finer and diagonal lines are smoother than the Japanese. In both pieces, rocks are depicted using zigzag-shaped colors. In the Chinese piece, various zigzag lines are placed unevenly, whereas in the Japanese piece, some zigzag lines are equally and monotonously spaced. These works and wefts are silk and works are oriented in vertical direction. The same can be observed in the Japanese piece. So Japanese weavers imitated Chinese materials and weaving techniques as well as pictorial theme. The Chinese works are two strands of S direction twist applied in Z direction, hereafter S to Z. But Japanese works have an opposite twist and ply, two strands of Z direction twist applied in S direction, hereafter Z to S. The Chinese wefts are S to Z. The Japanese wefts are mostly S to Z, but blue wefts are Z to S. In the Guion Festival, 4 hangings made of Flemish tapestries are preserved. The theme is a Trojan War. One of these tapestries has a BB mark, guaranteeing it is from Brabant, Brussels. Another tapestry has a mark of Nicars Arts. He was active in Brussels from 1580 through 1620. It indicates that Trojan War tapestries were woven around the late 16th through the early 17th centuries. 4 Japanese tapestries imitating Flemish productions remain in festivals in and around Kyoto. One is the outer back hanging of people in Abura-Tenjin-yama district of the Gion Festival. Zoko shows that in 1815, Abura-Tenjin-yama produced an outer back hanging of a Japanese tapestry illustrating people. As we know, it is a Japanese production in 1815. The Abura-Tenjin-yama piece includes 2 kinds of borders, which are almost the same as the Trojan War tapestries. It can be inferred that the European tapestry with the same design once existed, and the Abura-Tenjin-yama piece was produced after that. In the Flemish and the Japanese pieces preserved in the Guion Gion Festival. A king and a queen are included. The king in the Japanese piece has an animal figure on his crown. It is possible that the Japanese cartoonist misunderstood the European feather for an animal. This piece includes many similar awkward expressions. In the Flemish piece, words are oriented horizontally. The Japanese piece is the same. In the Flemish piece of the Trojan War in Hakurakuteyama district, the verbs are wool, Z3S. In the Japanese copy in Kotobukiyama district, the verbs are wool, Z2S. In the Japanese production, the twist and the ply of verbs are uneven, and thick fibers are often mixed together. This Flemish piece consists of wool wefts of Z2S. It is the same in the Japanese piece, however, thick fibers are frequently included. As for Japanese creations, the following questions can be raised. What kind of foreign elements were absorbed? Who produced them? What was the purpose of usage? 3 stages of the Japanese tapestry creations will be observed. In the early 19th century, Japan started to create expressions using tapestries. Good examples are 4 tapestries of the Uradeyama district in the Gion Festival. These pieces depict 4 famous scenes of the Edo period. The Mount Fuji piece includes the motifs which are currently formatted vertically. However, my research clarifies that these motifs were formatted horizontally in the early 19th century. The primary source, Giyonne, Uradeyama, Shingu Iriniki, the record of sacred utensils of Gion Festival Uradeyama, indicates that Matsushima was woven by Monya Jirobe, Itsukushima by Ikoma in 1831, Amano Hashidate by Monya Jirobe, and Mount Fuji by Itoya Hikobe. These pieces are precious as names of the weavers and the production year are known. The lost cartoon of Matsushima was discovered during my research. This cartoon includes the name of the painter, Beigan Okugawa, who was not the major painter, but one of the anonymous cartoon painters. These Japanese productions frequently include the zigzag-shaped color change, which are spaced evenly and monotonously. The works and the weft is silk, and work orientation is vertical. These features indicate that the Japanese chose Chinese tapestry as a technical foundation for their expressions. In these tapestries, verbs are Z to S, opposite to the Chinese, and the wefts are S to Z, the same as the Chinese. This presenter will research further with more specimens to clarify technical features of the Japanese tapestries of this period. In 1868, the Edo period finally ended and the new Meiji era began. Meiji government's new foreign policy observed European technology and cultures. In the second half of the 19th century through the beginning of the 20th century, development of the Japanese tapestry was led by Jinbei Kawashima II, hereafter Jinbei, who supervised tapestry industries and productions. Jinbei visited Europe and America to inspect textile industries. His visit to Guideline in Paris in 1886 strongly influenced him, and like Gagarin's, he began to produce large-scale tapestries based on the Japanese paintings for interior decoration. In the Liège exposition in 1905, the bird and the flower tapestry based on the painting by Hobun Kikuchi received the award of honor. Among his works, the finest and the most intricate tapestry is the Bodhisattva as Merciful Mother. This tapestry is based on the painting by Hogai Kano. Influenced by Goblin tapestries, Jinbei tried to reproduce paintings on tapestries using numerous color gradations. Moreover, he added a veil with an intricate pattern, which is not in the original painting. He presumably intended to show the delicate expression, which is only possible with his tapestries of fine and high-density silk threads. Most of his works consist of silk works and wefts, and works are oriented in vertical direction. His technical foundation is based on the Chinese tapestries. This is important because he added Guideline elements to Japanese tapestries. However, no one has been able to show that the foundation of the Japanese tapestry is the Chinese tapestry. So it can be said that his eclecticism was based on the Chinese, the Japanese, and the French elements. Seneca Yamaga became the leading figure of the Japanese tapestry creation from the beginning of the Showa period. In 1927, Sega submitted a tapestry titled Dutch Ship to the Imperial Art Academy exhibition. He won the special selection prize. He wanted to avoid imitating paintings and ignored perspectives and volume with numerous color gradations. He cut the ship in half to show blue and cargoes, simplified each motif, and line them up. In the tapestry titled The Dash, the speed of the train is expressed with distinctive technical features of exaggerated zigzag lines of wefts. Seiko went to China, sketched various scenes, dyed yarns, and wore various silk wefts for the tapestry titled Mount Manchu. There are tightly twisted yarns, chenille yarns, loop yarns, and knot yarns. These yarns are effective for various expressions of textures, which can be attained only by textiles, not by paintings. He also used new materials such as plastic tapes in his later career. His works had no specific usage, as he intended to create self-expressions as one individual tapestry artist. So, in conclusion, Zoho was used as a guideline to distinguish the foreign originals from Japanese copies produced in the first half of the 19th century. Research results indicate the possibility that the difference between the Japanese copies and the Chinese originals lies in the thread's makeup. However, this should be analyzed further with more specimens. The difference between the Japanese copies and the Flemish originals lies in awkward pictorial details and wool yarns with thick fibers obvious in the Japanese copies. To express individual pictorial theme, the Japanese chose Chinese tapestries rather than Flemish tapestries for technical foundation. Around the end of the 19th century through the beginning of the 20th century, Jinbei established his own eclecticism based on the Chinese, Japanese, and French elements. first half of the 20th century, Seiga employed new materials in order to attain expressions different from paintings but peculiar to textiles. Thank you.